everyone, it's Miss Rossi. Today we are going to create a textured alphabet. What you will be needing today is your white piece of paper from your art folder that says textured alphabet on it. This should be a big white piece of paper that has been folded so it has a bunch of little boxes on it. You're also going to need some crayons today because we are going to be doing crayon rubbings. So I have some old crayons that I peeled the labels off of. If you only have 1 or 2 crayons that you can peel the paper off of, you can use those. You don't need as many colors as I have. You can also use whatever colors you would like. We're also going to need a bunch of different objects from around our house, so you might have to go on a little bit of a scavenger hunt. So I have some different objects that I've collected here on my table, and they have one thing in common, and that is that they all have different textures. So texture is the way that something feels. Is it soft? Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it sharp? Is it fluffy? All of those different words we use to describe the way that something feels is talking about its texture. So I picked a bunch of different things from around my house that all have different textures, whether they are smooth, whether they have ridges on them, or patterns or designs, and I'm going to use these today to create some texture rubbings on my paper. So I am going to move some of these to the side, and I'm going to start with this little piece of cardboard that I have here. Now this is just a piece of a cardboard box that I ripped one layer off so I could see the bumpy inside part of it. And I am going to take this and do a texture rubbing with my crayon. So I am going to place this under my first little rectangular box on my paper. And I'm going to grab a crayon. And to do a texture rubbing, you place your object underneath your paper and you hold your crayon sideways so it is flat against the table. And you're going to push down on it, rubbing it back and forth on your paper. This is going to show the texture from your object. So now I can see all of those bumps and ridges I had on my cardboard showing up on my paper. Now some of our objects might be bigger than our little boxes, and that's okay. It is okay if our object kind of goes outside of the space. We just want to fill up our paper today with a bunch of different textures. So I'm going to grab my next one. This is a coaster that has a big swirling circular pattern on it. I can place that under my paper. I'm going to go under the next box. And I have a different colored crayon, and I'm just going to rub that right on there. And now I can see that big swirling pattern showing up on my paper. And it is okay, like I said, if your color and your object goes outside of the box, that is totally fine, because some of the things we're going to find today are going to be pretty big. I think I'm going to go in rainbow order with my colors, but again, you could pick whatever colors you would like to do your texture rubbings and to fill up your space. And now I have this case here that also has a little bit of a bumpy texture on it. So we can see how that is going to look if I place it under my paper and start to rub with my crayon. Oops. There we go. Ooh, look at that. That one's a little tough to see on the camera, I think, because it is yellow, but it is still showing up as a different texture than the other things that I've used so far. Now, I also have a vinyl record here. This one doesn't actually have any music on it, but it still has those ridges, so I won't be damaging anything if I do my texture rubbing using it. Now, since you are collecting things from around your house, you want to make sure you ask your parents' permission before you touch any of their things or anything that is breakable to make sure you are allowed to use it. Ooh, look at that. Very cool. Let's see what else I have. So our goal today is just to fill up our entire paper with all different textures. I can take my texture board and toss that on here. Let's see. There we go, nice. And now next week we are going to be adding some more color to our paper, so you don't have to worry about leaving any white space on here. That is totally okay for right now. We just want to try and get all different kinds of textures on our paper. So now I have a basket. This one might get a little tricky. There we go. Ooh, and I can even turn it so I can get both parts of the texture on here. There we go. And let's see, the last thing I have on my table here to do is my little plant. I'm going to be very careful because I don't want him to spill. But the outside of my planter has a different design on it. So I'm wondering how that's going to show up if I do my crayon rubbing right over the edge. we go. That looks cool, and I can see that design that was on my planter showing right up inside my box. So now I'm going to go on a scavenger hunt around my house to see some other items I can use to create some texture rubbings. So maybe things like the sidewalk outside or the driveway, maybe the tile in the bathroom, all different things around your house you can use to see if they have texture. Now again, you want to be extra careful not to hurt any of the items in your house. You don't want to start coloring on the walls or anything, so make sure you're staying on your paper with your crayons and that you are only using things you have permission to touch. Now, if you can only find a few things as your textured items, you can repeat those things in all different colors along your paper, or just repeat them a bunch of times all over. The only thing we want to do today is make sure we fill up our entire paper with texture. So if you can only find 1 or 2 things that have texture, you can use those throughout your paper, but try and see how many different things you can find. All right, so I'm gonna grab my paper and we're gonna go on a little adventure. Okay, so we started our texture scavenger hunt, and the first thing I'm going to do is my table, and it has a little bit of a wood texture on it. So I have my next color that I'm going to use, and again, I'm just going to rub that crayon on my paper, holding it sideways so I can pick up the texture of what is underneath my paper. And you can kind of see the little pattern there. I don't know if you can since it is yellow. But we can move on to another object. So I have my printer here, and the top of my printer has a little bit of a bumpy texture on it as well. So let me grab another color crayon, and I can fill in that next box. Awesome! So I'm going to keep going around finding different textures in my house that I can use to fill up the rest of my paper. And there you have it, all of my different textures that I found on my scavenger hunt, filling up my entire paper. So I do still have some white space left, and we are going to fill that in next time when we finish our projects, but I went around and I found as many different textures as I could. Some of my favorite ones were the bottom of a shoe. That one came out really nice. The sidewalk came out pretty well, And the tile in my bathroom floor also looked really nice when I did my texture rubbing. Once you're finished and your paper is full of all different kinds of textures, you can save it in your art folder until we can finish our projects next week. Since we are going to finish these next time, you do not need to hand anything in today. Just make sure you save your project in a safe place until we get to finish them together. I hope you had fun going on your texture scavenger hunt. Try your best to have fun and get creative, and I'll see you next time. Bye!